As I had alluded to earlier, is that on the second hour we are looking at conference tourism. What exactly is it? Why is it so important? And Kenya, why is Kenya always a hub for international conferences and summits? A good example is the current UNEA. There's a conference going on where the head of state is also gracing that. And a couple of weeks, let's say a couple of months ago, we had a number of summits here, including the Africa Climate Summit right here in Nairobi. And being Nairobi, remember Nairobi is the only capital city with a national park in it. And we can convert conference tourists to leisure tourists. But without further ado, what exactly is conference tourism? Allow me now to rope in Mr. Raymond Cheruyot, who is the founder and the CEO of Ure Safaris East Africa Limited. Karibu sana Bwana Cheruyot.
Thank you so much.
And welcome to KBC Studios.
I'm back again. I was here a couple of days ago.
All right.
Yeah.
Another thing is that one of the first things I'll touch on is on tourism. We know Kenya is a tourist hub in the region and in the world, but now we have conference tourism. What is it and why is it so important?
Great. Thank you so much for bringing up this when at the time when this is happening. Mm-hmm. The conference tourism basically is these are convergence of business people who come in and focusing on other things, and then the conference tourism comes in where are we able to convert them then into, apart from them sitting and doing their other businesses, can we take them around and get them to know what else is in Kenya? And that is what is a focus on. I think it's a rider on what we need to do than just converging the business people or entities that are coming in and into what we can earn from that as an extra mile of things that we need to do. Yeah.
And Kenya is a melting point of various aspects of tourism. And as I have mentioned, being Nairobi having a national park and being the capital city and also being the more or less like the East African capital, how do we ensure that we can convert the conference tourists to leisure tourists, which will earn us lots and lots of dollars?
I think that comes in the way we are marketing Kenya. Basically, when we are having conferences that are coming in, one of the things that possibly would be on the checkbox or on the tick box of what things to do is going beyond Nairobi, going to see what else is there. So one of the key things that would be key is enhancing the country's marketing into knowing what exactly is there beyond Nairobi. And most people definitely have heard about Nairobi being the only city that has a national park. Then that gains interest. If people don't really have much time to go out of Nairobi, then they have a game drive just next door into that. So a lot of information that is required to flow out. When we are having or when we are marketing activities that are coming in, then one of the key things would be then let's market Kenya as a block, so that once the businesses or the business entities have converged, then they become tourists. Because when they're coming in as business as business entities. And yeah, absolutely, that we need to enhance the marketing part of the country into making it that destination where people are yearning to go. So much so that when they are about doing the events, then the next to do thing would be, yes, let's go down and run that. And of course, to let them know that any business that is, or anyone who is attending any form of conference facility, then how long does it take them, possibly, let's say, to go and see the dolphins dancing in South Coast? Or how long does it take for them to go down to Masai Mara? Or how long does it take them to Takawiri Islands in Kisumu? That kind of information is what then will make them have the visits as part of their to-do things, away from the normal functions that have been put in place.
And we have seen when it comes to conference tourism, majorly it's the government who organizes this, or international organizations like United Nations,
Yes.
like the UNEA that is currently underway,
Yes.
the Africa Climate Summit that was led by His Excellency the President.
Yes.
How do companies like yours, Ure Safaris, come in when you talk about conference tourism?
All right. We have an entity that that is put in place by law, and that is KTB, that does marketing of Kenya through the Magical Kenya.
Talking about Kenya Tourist Board?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
KTB, Kenya Tourism Board. Uh-huh. Through Magical Kenya, then they do this form of marketing in that particular strength. And underneath, then we have organizations that are working under where an example of Ure Safari subscribes to, that is like Tour Operators Society of Kenya. That information trickling down to the bodies that we have, like Tour Operators Society of Kenya, then trickles down to Ure Safaris, Bigfoot, Kudu, and many other tour operators that are under. Those are the people who will actualize the sales. Because there's a marketing part, and now there's a conversion. Once they know, so what next? And that information trickling down basically means then all these bodies are working together concurrently. So if there's a conference facility that is being organized, then it's been known that these are the targets of what we are looking at, away from the functions that the conferences are focusing on. And so Ure Safaris comes in to convert, all right? But they can only convert when they have the information. And how do they get the information? Through the structured body put in by the government, the same government that is organizing the conferences. Yeah.
And I'm looking at the tourism industry, which I will say, without any fear of contradiction, is a very volatile industry. Reason being, you do remember the attacks that we had in Lamu. Of course, the tourists there fled, and it affected tourism in that area. Look at COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, it polarized the tourism industry. How did you guys bounce back, and what are some of the measures that you have placed in place to avoid this kind of shocks?
It's an extremely volatile, like you're saying, and it's a social business. Now, being social business means what does the mind get to feed so that they know how to react into it. When you have such attacks like you've had, I've actually had an instance where I was in Lamu, and well, this was a clash between us as tour operators who are doing site visits and the security personnel. And what happened is, as you're just driving off, we got the personnel coming and all over us, and that almost came into what I would call harassment. I would imagine if that converted into, if I was a tourist, then I would fear going to that particular destination. So then, essentially, what happens is, then it requires a whole chain of coordination on when you get to identify yourself, then how do you get the protection of the security? And how then do you get assured that the security at that particular tail end of where you're going? So it all boils down to how the information is flowing. So the power of the thing is in the information. It's in where we feed the tourist or the prospective tourist mind. All right. How the pandemic was managed. You saw the flow of information all coming through all the time about what was being done, about the taming, about when it came down. Basically, there's a flow of information that helps us in the tourism sector get to convince the prospects that everything is under control. So the bounce back is basically on the flow of information and nothing else. And it's not magic. It just requires a lot of focus and input by the relevant bodies to relay that information. And like I said, it's a social business. Being a social business basically means it gets to the person directly. Yeah. It's not an institution. It is, and even in institutions, there are individuals in there. So, and those individuals, it's all the way they get to perceive it. Are they getting the reassurance that if they came in, they would be safe. If they came in, they would get value for money. If they came in, will they see one or two things that you're saying, this is all about Kenya? Right.
And still on COVID-19 pandemic era, the tax waivers for hospitality industry and the economic stimulus package by the government. Tell us how it really helped sustain your businesses, which some unfortunately had to fold up.
I would say that helped in a big way, and let me put it, even right now, and these were by acts of parliament. Being able to purchase, for example, a tour vehicle that exempts us from paying VAT definitely saves a lot of falls in terms of strengths and powers of the value that I need to put in. And what does that do? It accelerates or it boosts me. So that almost boils down to being a grant into the tourism sector, because when you're told you ain't paying for a tax or you're not paying VAT for this tour Land Cruiser, then it saves you a lot of money. And therefore the government is already then giving you that incentive to bounce back and be able to be on business. And that has helped a lot, many of us who are in that particular sector of business. Yes.
From where you sit, we have the Kenyatta International Convention Center, which houses about 5,000 in the biggest auditorium. We have Bomas of Kenya, where at least we can also take advantage of it. How do we cascade this into counties where maybe we hear there's a big international forum going on in Garissa? We have an international summit in some place in Bumula or in some parts of Kambani.
I think one of the key things, and this is the realization even to the county governments, is that one of the devolved functions is on the tourism. And then, therefore, it all depends on each and every county, the tourism, the CECs managing tourism and the governors, to put that as one of the key things that they need to invest on, and having structures or having facilities in readiness for any form of conference that would happen in a place. So if you have been given functions of tourism, then it's not just about sitting and saying there's a certain destination. What is the readiness? What are you doing to ensure that we have, we're able to accommodate? And this is just about now. The way we are competing with TZ, for example, as a country, is the same way that the counties would be competing among themselves in putting up muscles to welcome as many persons, and also then it depends on what exactly is the structured plan. If you're not able to have, if you don't have natural resources, for example, like Narok has Masai Mara. Garissa doesn't have. But what else would they do? Because if you're having a conference facility that is in Garissa, they would easily then would be able to be transferred to Masai Mara. So it is for the counties to ensure that they have facilities that are leveraging on what has been put in their region. And they weren't put in those regions by anybody. It's just gods who decided that they need to sit in that particular part of the country. And therefore they would enhance whatever within their counties.
Just in case you joined us, this is KBC Business, and we are looking at the conference tourism, and that is one of them, the UNEA 6. That is more or less an example of conference tourism. And before we went for the break, I was asking our expert here what we need to do to convert those tourists, conference tourists, into leisure tourists. And the head of state has indeed started by saying that indeed we have a number of sites that these tourists can visit as well. But because of the interest of time, allow me now to rope in again our panel, my panel, that has Raymond Cheruiyot, who is the founder of Ure Safaris East Africa. We are looking at conference tourism and trying to marry it with other forms of tourism, just as the head of state has wrapped up there. And we were looking, before we went for the break, we were looking at how do we take advantage of, and especially Nairobi. A good example of that has been organized by UNEP. The last Africa Climate Summit we had here in Nairobi was organized by government.
Yes.
And if you look at so many conferences that we have been organized by the government, where do you individuals as the private sector come in?
All right, and let me first applaud our president by the magnitude of marketing that he's doing to the country. I mean, he just spoke about what we talked about just before we went to the break. And yeah, that's a very good challenge. And here, as I was sitting here, I'm here with about 150 tour operators that I sit with, asking them, have you converted any of these experts on UN into the tourism to be your guests? And our play come in, and I think that I need to throw this challenge back to KTB, who is the body entrusted with marketing the country, to have the information with us trickling down, because it's in the conversion that has value and nothing else. And therefore, then you can do conversions when you have information, and we talked about this, and information is the power. If we have a collaboration that is watertight, because the government doesn't have a business of then, once they've organized the event, then it's upon the tour operator or the travel agent then to get in and be able to do conversion for that particular basis. So basically what has happened is the government has put everything on the table, and it's for you to take. All right. Our coming in, like I said, comes in through a structured channel where we're being told we have so number of guests who are expected to attend the conference. Then who will take those guests to Nairobi National Park, for example? It is the tour operator that is here on the ground. And for that to happen, then there has to be a flow of information and pre-arrangement before the conference hub, so that by the time the guests are getting done with the conference that they are having right now, then we would not want to subject them to meet with the lions in the streets, like the president has just said. we want them to get the lions at the designated point. So if for whatever reason a lion strays, then it's KWS that will tell them, no, we don't want the lions on the street, we want them at the park, and therefore get them back. We are on our way with our guests. Yeah. So there has to be a kind of a systematic arrangements of staff and of activities that will then give the assurance to that particular guest who is sitting there. Once I'm done with the conference, I'm going to have lunch and hop into that Land Cruiser, and we have a long, it would actually be a very nice thing to see traffic being caused by the guests who are coming in from the conference, going to Nairobi National Park, or they are heading to Wilson because they want to hop into Masai Mara. You get? It's actually a very good opportunity, because as much as those guests are there representing the organizations, they're also individuals who have desires of things that they need to feed their minds with and all that stuff. And the story that they'll write home. They'll write home stories about when they go to their families, then they have stories to tell their families, this is what I saw and all that stuff. And that becomes a chain of marketing and business back.
All right. Let me try and simplify this, because as you have seen and as you've heard from the head of state, is that he has more or less like simplified what those tourists needs to do. Just go to Nairobi National Park, go to the wild beast migration, go to Naivasha. What if the private sector, and especially companies and not only necessarily government, instituted having such conference halls in such places, maybe near near Masai Mara, maybe near Naivasha, as opposed to what we have here. We have the KICC, which is widely known outside the country. We have the Bomas of Kenya. They wanted actually to expand it. We are looking at that. If we have a satellite Bomas in a hall of maybe 2,000 people in Masai Mara, maybe you have a small subsidiary of KICC in Naivasha, more or less. This would really boost that, right?
Yes, absolutely. And let me just, before I get into the private sector, because we are driven by the structures that have been put in place. I mean, we would easily then come together as Top Operator Society of Kenya and tell Magical Kenya, this is what we need to do, or tell Kato, or tell Kata, let's all meet, we organize a conference. But we are guided by structures that have been put in place. When we spoke, I told you about the development of the tourism ministry, that they in each of the counties. Let's make it easy, and this possibly would be a challenge that will go to the most mentioned place when tourism is mentioned, and you know what that place is? That's Masai Mara. I mean, you would not miss talk about tourism without talking about Masai Mara. Do we have such a facility that would accommodate? Or would the CEC and the governor of Masai Mara be willing then to pop the roof and ensure that the next big thing in terms of conference that is going to happen, we convene in Narok, right? And when that is happening, would we loop in the stakeholders in the tourism? Can we get Tusk being there? Can we get Kata being there? Can we get Kato being there, sitting on the desk? So that now we are saying, hey, gentlemen, once you're done with this particular conference, the next thing that we want to do is that we need to, because you are creating jobs for those people or the young Kenyans, the so-called hustlers, then we want you to get positioned in such a way that once you're done with the conference, get your cut. Right. When that happens, then everyone else would be busy and saying, today we have a conference in Nairobi, or we're going to have a conference in Narok. And in that conference, we have so much guests. And in that guests, we need to convert them. They must, actually, if we have 2,000 guests who are saying, now after this, we are going to see the animals, we all get them into the Mara. Where the private sector comes in is now on facilitating, making sure that you have transportation that are going in there, making arrangements for the accommodation for those particular guests, drawing up the itinerary of things that are going to be seen, and that way it cascades down into that private person, that private sector that we're talking about. Right. And that way, then we have things running smoothly.
All right, thank you so much. We are winding up. I'll just give you a minute for your closing statement. Of course, we have a lot of potential in the counties. We are having devolution conferences in every county, but unfortunately, you see, our MCA is going to Tanzania, Zanzibar for this. But as we wrap up.
The time was so short. There's a lot to talk about in tourism in Kenya. And let me just talk about the Homa Bay. We had a convention that was happening in Homa Bay. I think yesterday is the president, when the president was there the day before. Okay. And then we'll be talking about what is in that particular end in terms of tourism, so that then we start tuning our minds towards. There's so much then. So then I just need to, this is a challenge to the government, and not to the president is doing marketing, like we've seen it. The Magical Kenya, through the KTB, please call us on the table as a private sectors. Let's have a discussion. Let us convert every single conference that is happening in a country into sales in terms of selling the tourism sector, so that we don't have it mentioned just as a by the way, but as an actual thing that is earning something to the country.
Indeed.
Right.
Thank you so much, Raymond Cheruyot, who is the founder and the CEO of Ure Safaris East Africa Limited. There we were looking at conference tourism. And it's a good thing that the head of state has just popped in as we were talking about that, which is indeed boost from conference tourism to leisure tourism. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. My name is Ben Troy. Enjoy holding brief for the business check this day. And of course, I'm giving the baton to the Swahili desk. My sign language interpreter is Byron Abuli. Initially, we had Anwangeshi. We are now crossing over for Tamrini and Kurunzi Mashinani. Do have a good one. But let's continue this conversation on social media.
Mm.